Well, today we celebrate this Tuesday of the 16th week at Ordinary Time. We continue through our liturgical year. Today we continue to read from Micah. And I think that this selection from Micah is kind of, what we would see is kind of a comforting reading, a compassionate reading. We know that often with the prophets that their books begin with this kind of taking Israel to task, taking Judah to task, saying, okay, you have got to turn your lives around and begin to return to God, turn away from evil, turn away from brokenness, broken choices. And then often at the end of the book, there is kind of this kind of pledge in God's mercy. And not always. I think there's at least one book where it just ends with this sense that God is going to strike. And it's very, very going to be very harsh. And so we have to kind of remember these two sides, the justice and mercy of God. And it says that in this case, we're hearing of this mercy, that you will cast into the depths of the sea all our sins. You will show faithfulness to Jacob and grace to Abraham, as you have sworn to our fathers from days of old. This takes us back to the idea of the covenant, that God promised blessings to Israel if the people would keep the covenant. And we know that while we are often unfaithful, that God is faithful. He is full of, grace and mercy. All grace is from Him. And so God's desire is to save. God's desire is to have mercy. And I find, again, this reading is beautiful, and with the idea that of throwing our sins into the sea. In today's world, we have mapped the ocean. We have checked and plumbed the depths of the ocean, and essentially we know what the ocean is. We know what is in the ocean. But in the ancient world, they didn't have the technology to investigate the sea. So for them, the sea was an image of chaos. The sea was an image of the world before God puts it together in creation. And so this is essentially saying that God, you have destroyed our guilt. And we know that in the blood of Christ that has happened, that God has forgiven our sins. And so such a beautiful way of understanding our forgiveness. This reading from the Gospel is in Matthew, and this is one of my favorite readings and one of my favorite places in the Gospels. And I love when I get to talk about it. Jesus is speaking with people, and he says, and they're saying, your family members, presumably Jesus should have been doing something in the house as his mom's coming to get him, grab his ear, something like that. Yes, I know what that feels like. But anyway, and she's coming to get him, and then the disciples that are related to Mary's family, etc. And Jesus says, here are my brothers and sister and mother. And we have to understand that for the Jews, belonging to the family of God meant being the people that were descended from those who had received the promises that God had made. The family of David and the 12 tribes. And God has extended that membership into the family of God. And so now what makes us members of the family of God is the waters of baptism. And I go back to a distinction I've made, that all of us are creatures of God, but we are made children of God by being baptized. And not everyone is a child of God, really, until they are baptized. And then you take on that new dignity and the person is washed clean and the old man or woman is washed away. And so our calling is to follow the Lord. If you are not trying to follow the Lord by living out your baptism, remember, living out our baptism as we pledge during Easter, that we are not really in the family of God. So I ask you as we continue our week to live your baptism. Think, I was baptized. That is my strength. That is what is going to give life to my Christian way of life. My choice is today that I am a child of God, and I'm going to live out my baptism by the works that I should be undertaking.